You know what they say, you can't win your fantasy draft in the early rounds, but you can lose it. And today, Jeff Bell and I, we're going to look through the early round startup picks, finding our favorite player values at every single position. Jeff, before we get into this, we're going to do a draft style. I pick my favorite guy, then you pick your favorite value. We're going to ping pong back and forth. Overall, what is it that you're looking for in these early rounds? Are you looking for security? Are you looking for upside? Are there certain positions you attack? Try to talk me a little bit through your strategy here.
Obviously, I want to target quarterback. If we're talking about super flex, I'm still somebody that values quarterback. I mean, I'm putting high emphasis on youth. I want to have youth. I mean, all the things that you talked about, secure youth within valuable positions is really what I'm looking for. And when it comes down to it, being able to lock down two young quarterbacks is ideal. Being able to lock down maybe a tight end 1 overall is ideal, or grabbing wide receivers. And I think that really when we're talking about for this exercise, we're going through the top 60. We're each grabbing 1 quarterback, 1 running back, 1 wide receiver, and 1 tight end, back and forth. And so if you grab a quarterback, then I don't have to grab a quarterback right away, because that's the style of what we're doing here. But really looking for building that strong base through these, talking about top 60. So you're talking about your first 5 rounds of a startup draft.
And we have done a lot of startup drafts lately. First of all, shout out to the listener leagues, everybody who threw their name into threw their name into the hat and was able to get into these leagues. We've done 5 dynasty startups now with our listeners. I should also, I probably buried the lead here. Welcome back, YouTube. How you guys doing? Jeff and I did this big audio only series over the last couple of weeks. You can find that on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to your podcast. We went through division by division, looking at every single team, tearing through every single depth chart, looking at projections, talking about every fantasy relevant player. So we've got like 8 hours of content right now sitting on our audio feed if you want to catch up on that. But yeah, we are back on YouTube 2 shows a week between now and kickoff. So nice to see you again. But without further ado, Jeff, let's go ahead and dive right in. The guy that I picked that I think right now is the best value in the first 5 rounds of your dynasty startups is Cam Ward, the guy that I've talked about quite a bit so far this offseason. I look at the security of a guy getting drafted number 1 overall. I did a study on this last year. We're looking at an 87% likelihood of a guy that is going to start 5+ years in the league. And if you're getting that, a quarterback who's basically guaranteed a 5-year leash, that to me gives you the safety that you want in these early rounds. But on top of that, I think that Cam Ward is just a misunderstood prospect. I think, Jeff, we've talked about it a little bit. Earlier on in the offseason process, a lot of people said, well, he's not as good as Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels or Drake May, and probably would have been like QB4 in this draft class. Well, we were looking at a historic draft class last year. I think when you compare a lot of number 1 overall picks and try to fold them into last year's draft class, they're going to end up QB4, QB5. That doesn't mean Cam Ward is a bad player. The ceiling for him is still so high. And I know the situation isn't great right now with Calvin Ridley and then this hodgepodge of veterans and undrafted guys and has-beens. But I look at Cam Ward, a guy with a very good arm, a guy with some scrambling upside, and with a coach that believes in him, Brian Callahan, a guy who was able to coach up and develop Joe Burrow, and I get very excited for the future here. So right now, I just think that he is grossly misunderpriced at QB 16. I've got him at QB 12 in my dynasty rankings. Jeff, as we've been doing these, you have seen me in the early startups we were doing. I reached for him in round 3, and then I realized, wait, I could probably get this guy in round 4. And then it got to the point in our later startups where I was getting him in the 5th round. It is crazy to me. The guy that was just drafted number 1 overall is dropping in round 5 in dynasty startups. Jeff, what are your thoughts on Cam Ward?
Well, we started talking about what you're looking for in early rounds, but I think that one of the biggest things that I'm looking for in early rounds is accumulating value that will grow. And I think that when you look outside of the top 40, I mean, I think you can make an argument for JJ McCarthy if things work well in that Minnesota offense. But outside of that, maybe Cam Ward has the best opportunity to be a player that can be a first round top 12 value if everything goes correct this rookie year, or even if just not everything goes correct, just things look really good. If things look strong, if he shows some dual threat ability, if he shows that he's got a handle on the position, if the Titans were to go out and add another weapon to augment him, you could definitely make the case that he would be in the top 12 when it comes to a startup. And so when you're drafting him potentially 47th overall in keep trade cut value, that to me is realizing potential value in the future. And so I think that that's a strong pick there to start it off with. And I don't blame you going that direction. I mean, Jonathan Taylor's ranked right above him in keep trade cut value. And I think it's really, really difficult for Jonathan Taylor to gain any dynasty value at this point. You're really kind of talking about he's just going to atrophy. He's going to lose value as he gets older, and unless he bangs out a 2,000-yard season. But even then, people would say he's a 27-year-old running back that just put a whole bunch of carries on his body. And we're seeing a guy in Philadelphia that is a 27-ish-year-old running back that put a whole bunch of carries on his body. So, yeah, I think that grabbing Cam Ward at 47, you're looking at a potential ascending asset there.
And you want to talk about a perfect ascension, a guy who was compared to another prospect and was devalued because of it. CJ Stroud coming in his rookie season, getting drafted after Bryce Young. People preferred Bryce Young, and that was the reason to knock CJ Stroud. And after the draft, CJ Stroud was floating, according to Keep Trade Cut, right around QB 11, QB 12. So still valued even higher than Cam Ward is now. And we saw one good rookie season from CJ Stroud, and he immediately shot up to QB 1 overall. Now, we know that was probably not the best market reaction there, and it has since valued out a little bit. But if you were in a dynasty startup where you were able to get a player in round 5 that after one season was then the most valuable player in dynasty, I mean, we obviously would have recommended selling player at that time. And if you're getting Cam Ward right now in round 5 and he has a season like CJ Stroud's rookie year and shoots up to number 1 overall in the rankings, like you said, huge value grow there. So that's my guy. Jeff, over to you. Who are you picking that you think is the best value on the board?
I'm going to grab Brock Bowers at tight end. I'm not going to mess around. I'm going to grab the top tight end. He is 7th overall in Keep Trade Cut. We've seen the drafts that we have done with our listeners. He's usually about 10th overall in those drafts. And so I just think it's tremendous value when you really break it down and say how often or how many tight ends have a credible case to lead the league in receptions. And I think that Brock Bowers has a very credible case to be the NFL leader in receptions should things work out in that favor. You look at bringing in Geno Smith. I mean, that's a better quarterback situation than he had last year by a lot, kind of. And we saw that breakout in year 1 as a rookie last year. And so you're improving that situation. You're bringing Chip Kelly in, new offensive coordinator. Geno Smith, you feel better about the quarterback there. And for whatever reason, it doesn't feel to me like, obviously he's 7th overall, so he's being valued there. I don't know that it's getting the proper context put out on what he accomplished in his first season, plus improvements internally within a Raiders offense, and then a defense that I don't know scares anybody. And so you could have the potential for shootouts here in a very competitive division. I mean, I feel better again about Geno Smith getting him the ball relative to Aiden O'Connell, relative to Gardner Minshew. So I want to grab that. I want a piece of that. And if he were to lead the league in receptions, from the tight end position, I mean, does he have a case as being the number 1 overall player in non-Superflex dynasty? Because maybe
he puts up a year 2 like his rookie season, I think he would be. Yeah.
Yeah, so having that opportunity to be able to grab that piece, I'm not going to mess around. That's a player that I want to be able to have on my dynasty rosters for as many rosters as I can. And again, if it realizes it, especially if you've got any sort of premium on your tight end position in your league, we do see that a lot of premiums across. I just think there's so much value to be realized from Brock Bowers.
Now, semi-rhetorical question here, Jeff, because somebody might be asking. Ashton Jeanty, obviously getting drafted 6th overall. We know Pete Carroll and we know Chip Kelly. These guys like to run the ball a lot. Do you have any concern that maybe they change their offensive philosophy a little bit and, they start running the ball more, they slow down the clock, they take the air out of the ball, and that could negatively impact Brock Bowers? I obviously, based on what you've said, I don't believe you feel that way. So talk me through that a little bit, why you think this might actually be a better situation, even though they just invested a premium pick in running back.
Did they get the Legion of Boom too on defense? Because right now, I don't know if the Raiders defense is going to be able to put them in position where they're going to be able to run the ball and take the air out of the ball and control games. And especially when you look at playing in a division with, the Chargers wouldn't mind playing that way probably, but right. The Broncos and the Chiefs have the capability of putting up some points. And so I think when you're looking at potential fireworks within that division, you're going to have to score at some level to be able to keep up. So yeah, hypothetically, I'm sure that Pete Carroll would love to do that. But right. Again, does he have the Legion of Boom on defense? And is he going to be
also
able
playing
to
in the AFC West? Like they've got tough schedule this year. They've got tough opponents. Right. Yeah. So like I said, semi-rhetorical, but I think at least worth discussing a little bit for the viewers.
Yeah,
here.
And I think it's interesting too when you put context on that rookie season because Devontae Adams was there for the first month of the season. And yeah, Brock Bowers led the team in
target
targets.
share.
Yeah.
36% target share last year when he was in Las Vegas.
Yeah, and Brock Bowers week 1 led the team in targets, but then week 2 through 4 he didn't lead the team in targets, and so I mean, yeah, it's there might even be upside that wasn't even realized off last year.
All right, back over to me, Jeff. And the guy that I'm going to take here is a prospect who had a quiet rookie season, but broke out in a huge way. And the market just hasn't rebounded yet. Jackson Smith-Njigba still being drafted as the wide receiver 12, according to Keep Trade Cut. And what we saw last year wasn't a blip. I mean, we saw the true breakout last year. DK Metcalf went down with an injury. Jackson Smith-Njigba stepped in from week 9 onward over the entire second half of the season last year. Jackson Smith-Njigba's 17-game pace over 1,400 yards and 9 touchdowns. That is elite wide receiver 1 production. And we knew this is who the player was. He slipped a little bit in the draft, but Jeff, you remember going into that 2023 draft, a lot of people were talking about JSN as the standout, clear-cut wide receiver 1 of this class. It talks about him going top 5, talks about him going top 10. He ended up slipping a little bit. Then he injured his wrist in the preseason. Still was able to produce a little bit as a rookie, but very disappointing considering the prospect he was, draft capital that he garnered. But now DK Metcalf is out of the picture. Tyler Lockett's out of the picture. I realized they brought in Cooper Kupp, but at this point in his career, Cooper Kupp is going to be relegated to a lot of slot duties. I'm not looking at him as a huge barrier for JSN to be that guy there. And what we saw last year was JSN played out wide a little bit when DK Metcalf went down with an injury. And if we're looking in this Clint Kubiak offense, JSN maybe taking over that X receiver role that has been a very prolific role in Kubiak offenses in the past. So we've seen him do it as a slot guy. We've seen him do it as a downfield guy. Now we can get a little taste of him as the X receiver as well. For me, this is one where we saw the value just fell out from under him. He fell all the way to wide receiver 34 after his rookie season. He's rebounded since up to the top 12, but I still think there is room with another big season for that value to continue growing.
Yeah, and we can have concerns about Sam Darnold in the quarterback position and if he's going to see ghosts, whatever it ends up being. But I also have faith in Sam Darnold's ability to get the ball to a playmaker like Jackson Smith-Njigba. And I think that really when you're looking at Jackson Smith-Njigba, that's where it comes down to having that faith in Darnold that I think he is caliber of a player at quarterback that can deliver to his weapons. We saw it last year with Minnesota being able to deliver to those weapons. Now, if it goes to Jalen Milroe, I mean, people may make the case that the bottom could fall out there. That being said, if it goes to Jalen Milroe, it also could be this type of situation like we saw with Justin Fields in Chicago when he got DJ Moore and he just hyper targets Jackson Smith-Njigba. The coaching staff makes the reads very easy for Jalen Milroe, and you're talking about a 35-40% target share for Jackson Smith-Njigba that probably would not be a pass-heavy offense, but still, I think that there's potential there for at least realizing potential value and being able to support that. And so I think that that's a good call out. I think Smith-Njigba at his best really profiles well into what NFL receivers are looking for, receivers that can handle volume within NFL offenses.
And you talked about it, Sam Darnold last year. Jeff, off the top of your head, do you remember where Justin Jefferson finished in fantasy last year?
Like wide receiver 3, wide receiver 2,
wide receiver 2. Yeah. So yeah, if you got faith, and of course, maybe Jackson Smith-Njigba isn't as talented as Justin Jefferson, but still a very good prospect that we saw a lot of life from over the second half of last season. And if your concern is Sam Darnold, all you got to do is look back at last year and hopefully alleviate that concern. So great value off the board for me. He is another player that I've walked out of these startups with quite a few shares of Jackson Smith-Njigba and feeling good about it. Jeff, back over to you. Who are you taking next?
All right. Well, we've got a quarterback, a wide receiver, and a tight end off the board. And so just playing this game theory, I'm going to go ahead and take my favorite running back value, and I'm going to go with Quinshon Judkins. Running back 11, 55 overall. And to me, I think he's a player that's getting lost in the shuffle a little bit when it comes to, obviously, we've got Ashton Dentey and obviously Marion Hampton with first round pick. Travion Henderson carried so much excitement, but Judkins went very, very high in the draft, going very high in day 2. And I think that one of the things that there was a lot of conversation around Cam Ward coming in relative to the quarterbacks in the previous season and where he would be valued. I think to do that similar exercise with Judkins, if you were to put Judkins into the 2024 class with an injured Jonathan Brooks, with Trey Benson,
The
I
RB1.
think you got he's probably running back one, and we would be
I think
treated, we
there's
would be
6 guys you can make that case for in this class, maybe.
exactly. Yeah, and so I think that context with Judkins really colors a lot of it. And I understand potential concerns around a Cleveland offense that we don't know who is going to play quarterback. We don't know what the backfield will look like. But at the same time, I think that there's potential that Judkins is really the focal point within that offense because of maybe Jerry Jeudy, maybe David Njoku, but at the same time, you could have a rookie that can come in and really carry the load there. And so I think that context around Judkins is everything here, where everybody consensusly had made him their running back 4 and just kind of an afterthought. But again, if you were to roll it back, and if he was in the 24 class, he would have been running back 1 probably with a bullet, and people would be probably very, very excited about it, and you would get a lot more dynasty value off that. We're talking about 55 overall. We're almost talking into the 6th round, almost
Crazy.
at that point. Yeah. And yeah, very, very young running back that has a very clear situation in front of him. And so I think that, again, what am I looking for when I'm building a team? I'm trying to get quarterbacks, I'm trying to get wide receivers and potentially tight end early. And so if I can do that, if I can hit both my quarterback positions, if I've got a couple young wide receivers and I can swing around and grab Quinshon Judkins to be my hero running back in a build, I'm very happy with that.
And you see the Browns running back room right now, and it seems very obvious, like that Quinshon Judkins is going to be the volume guy here because Jerome Ford, Pierre Strong, and Dylan Sampson all have overlapping skill sets. They're guys that like to get out in space. They've got that straight line speed. But if you're looking at the guy who's going to handle 200, 250, maybe even more than that touches in a season, Judkins is the guy with the build for that. So Nick Chubb, clearly not coming back to Cleveland. We just got word that he signed with the Houston Texans officially after clearing his physical early today. So wheels up for Quinshon Judkins. I don't know if you got your projections right in front of you, Jeff, but I imagine that you probably have somewhere between 250, 275 touches if we're looking at carries and targets going his way this season, because somebody's got to touch the ball there. And we like Jerome Ford, and Dylan Sampson is a fun name, and Pierre Strong was a little flash in the pan a couple of years ago, but this is very much so going to be Quinshon Judkins' backfield.
Yeah, I'm racing, and I've almost got it here. Let's see.
I was trying to filibuster as long as I could there.
You did a really good job there.
Rambling.
I'm probably running maybe a little bit low on Judkins, but I've got 201 rushes and I've got 28 targets. And so you're looking at about 230 touches. There's certainly upside with
RB1 volume.
And yeah, it's over 1,100, or it's about 1,100 total yards. It's multiple touchdowns. And so, yeah, those types of things that give you fantasy points.
Well, Jeff, you're a very smart man. You're playing like game theory and Dave already took his running back and his wide receiver. The smart thing here would have been to go after a different position, but I just went after Breece Hall with my next pick, a guy who just turned 24. Happy birthday, Breece. And just a really good running back. I mean, we saw it a couple of years ago. Like, this guy has overall RB1 upside, and this feels like one of those situations where the market has just gotten bored. He came off the ACL tear and immediately returned to elite form, but for whatever reason, we have just seen since the season ended, his value has just slowly dipped. He was the RB2 going into last year. He's now fallen all the way down to RB10. And I understand there's some concerns here. Justin Fields, a rushing quarterback. We've heard word from Aaron Glenn that he wants Isaiah Davis to be involved, and he wants Braylon Allen to be involved. And I understand this 4-headed rushing committee coming out of the Jets, but for me, it's as simple as wanting to bet on talent. And Breece Hall is one of the most talented young running backs in the NFL right now. Situations can change at the drop of a dime. The Chicago Bears, for instance, could call up the New York Jets tomorrow and make a trade for Breece Hall. Then all of a sudden, Breece Hall is back in the RB2 conversation. But because right now the short-term outlook for Breece doesn't look great, the market is starting to panic a little bit. I see a very, very good player who, got a year off for the ACL too, which may potentially lengthen his longevity a little bit. But I'm looking at a guy 24 years old, probably still has 3 to 4 elite years underneath him. You can get him at a huge discount right now because of the short-term uncertainty. And it's really just as simple as that. I want good players on my team right now. Breece Hall is a good player. I think he should probably be a 2nd or 3rd round pick, but he's consistently falling in around 4 and 5. And it's so hard for me to pass on him there.
Yeah, our friend at Football Guys, Matt Waldman, he does a very good show with Brandon Angelo, and they really do dive into to a lot of good football stuff. And one of their latest episodes, they threw out an idea of Breece Hall, like you mentioned, being traded to the Bears for DJ Moore as kind of a reuniting DJ Moore with Justin Fields, answering that wide receiver 2 question within the Jets organization, and then resetting and giving the Bears and obviously with Ben Johnson, with Aaron Glenn, there's some overlap there. There's some relationship there when it comes to coaches that were coordinators for both for the Lions last year. And so, I mean, that would be an interesting outcome. But I think more to that point of if I really view the Breece Hall 2 different ways on if the Jets are really going to muddy up this backfield and use these other backs, then they are being negligent when it comes to what Breece Hall can be and probably is viewed at least by one other team across the league when it comes to a potential very high upside guy. Or they come to their senses before the season, and when the lights really come on, they say, I mean, it's Breece Hall. We're going to give him the ball. And so I think that the living through those 2 potential outcomes, and even if you do get a muddled season this year, it might be one of those things where everybody freaks out, the dynasty value crashes out of it, but then he lands.
And then he signs with the Cowboys.
Then he signs with the Dolphins,
signs with the 49ers.
Like Breece Hall to the Chiefs, and he's Patrick Mahomes' new running back, and all of a sudden you are got Saquon Barkley 2.0, basically, when you come to that point. So I think there's a wide range of outcomes that there
could be an in-season trade that like week 1 they roll out and it actually is a 33 split. You got to imagine there's going to be a dozen NFL GMs out there that are saying, well, this is how they see Breece Hall. Let's try to pull them away from the Jets right now. So whether it's a camp trade, an in-season trade, or it's just one down year before he hits the open market, Breece Hall, you're not getting him for his 2025 season. I think you're drafting him for 2026 and beyond. And any short-term situation that does look better than right now is just a cherry on top.
Doesn't it feels to me like, so you've got the Rams here and you've got Kyron Williams going into a contract year, and doesn't it feel like a Rams thing to do would be like kind of like slow play that Kyron Williams contract, and then all of a sudden they've snatched Breece Hall and he's just Breece Hall like into Sean McVay offense. I don't know.
Maybe I think we've seen Sean McVay's strategy is just to throw day 3 darts at running backs. We saw Todd Gurley. We saw that for a short period.
What was Howie Roseman's strategy?
True. Yeah, you are right. Yeah, I mean that was, but I'm trying to think. They it was a lot of free agents and day 3 picks before Saquon Barkley, and you could be onto something there. Either way, I mean there are a lot of good teams out there, and I don't think a bad team that doesn't need a running back is going to be in the Breece Hall sweepstakes next offseason. So you got to imagine that wherever he lands going into 2026 will be better than his current situation. Jeff, back over to you. Who are you drafting next? The next best value in the first 5 rounds of a startup.
I'm going to go Marvin Harrison Jr. And Marvin Harrison Jr. at wide receiver 10, 26 overall. I mean, this is a guy that he was going in the first round of startups a year ago as a rookie before he even stepped foot on an NFL field. And now you can get him outside of the first 2 rounds, round 3. I think this is an amazing value potentially because, again, you can hit those 2 quarterback positions if you want to build that way and grab whatever it might be in your 2 quarterbacks and still swing around and have Marvin Harrison Jr. as a player that people were ready to make. Some people wanted to make him their dynasty wide receiver 1 before he even stepped foot onto a football field. And so I think that you're buying the dip there. And I think that there were definitely flashes to show the season was not as bad as maybe the reaction was on that rookie season. And then we're seeing this year already coming in and looking like he had even made over his body again and kind of developing and moving that direction. This is a player that he has been in and around the NFL game his entire life. He knows what it takes to be a high level NFL receiver. And I think there's a lot of, their narratives based upon what the Cardinals did last year and their treatment of him, but at the same time, like that can change. And I think that should probably change. And I think that the Cardinals will probably make an effort to change that, to involve Marvin Harrison Jr. in different areas of the field. And he's not just going to be a shot player that they took 4th overall in the draft. And, he's like scraping his way to 1,000-yard receiver. I don't think that's where we're looking at him being for the next couple of years.
So we talked about it on the audio only show when we did our NFC West breakdown. Or no, maybe it was a different show.
We have not done the NFC West breakdown yet, Dave.
NFC, yeah. We'll get that one out soon. But what show was it that we were talking? You made a David Boston reference when talking about Marvin Harrison. And did you see the media day picture that came out of Marvin Harrison today? Like where he's got muscles on his muscles. He's doing the straight arm flex, and you can just see triceps that look like 16-inch softballs sticking out of his arms. That doesn't bother you at all? That the guy looks like he's put on about 20 pounds this offseason?
The guy might be big, fast on the game of football, and I'm supposed to be bothered by that. So I don't
know. Well, Jeff, next guy I want to talk about, same team. Does a lot of the same things Marvin Harrison does. Trey McBride got to take a tight end, and I was looking, there were some other tight ends going inside the top 60, Sam Laporta, George Kittle, but man, I've got Trey McBride right behind Brock Bowers. And I do like Brock Bowers because we saw the immediate production coming out his rookie season. It did take Trey McBride a couple of years to kind of find his footing in the NFL. But last year, what we saw was Trey McBride, I think, has the better short-term profile than Brock Bowers. Last year, higher target rate, higher target share, basically everything else. And when I say higher, I'm talking like hardly even negligible. Like they were very, very tight in usage and overall production. The big difference was Brock Bowers caught touchdowns and Trey McBride didn't. But I look at it right now and, Trey McBride has just stepped up in a huge way. Last year, if you look at his target share and folded it in among the wide receivers, he would have been 6th in NFL target share among receivers. Like he was the first, the most targeted tight end by a long shot last year. Just a very good player on an ascending offense. And I think that when you look at Marvin Harrison, I mean, you can make the argument either way if you really want to, but these aren't guys that do the same thing. They have very different skill sets. They work in different areas of the field. So I'm not worried about the emergence of Marvin Harrison. I think if anything, that just raises the entire offense. So Trey McBride, pretty easy guy to take here with my last pick.
Yeah, I don't blame you there at all. And I think that what we are going to see, obviously, I just took Marvin Harrison Jr., but probably an offense that is hyper targeted between those two players as it should be. And there's such a gap between those two and the nominal wide receiver 3 within this offense that you absolutely should narrow down the target tree and treat those players as high end players. And again, Kyler Murray, I think that we have enough faith in Kyler Murray's ability to get them the ball. So I think that that's a good pick. I don't blame you for going there. And when we're talking about the tight end position, you ran through you don't have very many options. And that's part of the reason why I made Brock Bowers my first pick. And so, yeah, kind of you take what's the best there. But I think that we could see a potential scenario where the gap between Trey McBride and Brock Bowers lessens. And really part of the reason for that gap was touchdown luck for Trey McBride. And if that flips like it very possibly could, you could be having a very different conversation when it comes to the tight end position. So I don't blame you for going there. It's kind of where you had to go.
Yeah. And I think that anybody here in the show, don't hear what we're not saying. Obviously we like Brock Bowers as a value and we like Trey McBride as a value. That doesn't mean we hate Sam Laporta, but we'll check out the NFC North episode we did where we have a very deep dive and a long discussion on Sam Laporta and his long-term outlook. But Jeff, back over to you. You still have an opening at quarterback. Who do you think is the best quarterback value in the first 5 rounds of Dynasty startups?
According to Keep Trade Cut, and again, we've done 5 different startups. I haven't seen him fall this far, but Trevor Lawrence at 50 overall, quarterback 17 in Keep Trade Cut value. I'm going to grab Trevor Lawrence's great value there. We've seen in 2023, he was quarterback 13. In 2024, before that injury ended his season, he was quarterback 15. So you're talking about quarterback 17 overall. He's already placing above that when it comes to the seasonal finishes or the fantasy points that he's giving you. He adds Travis Hunter into his arsenal. He's got an emerging Brian Thomas Jr. that he's throwing the ball to. So all of a sudden, he arguably has the 2 best young weapons when it comes to any receiver in football, or any quarterback in football, I should say. And then still a younger player, younger probably than maybe some people realize. We're talking about a 25-ish-year-old player. And so, I mean, younger than Tyler Shuck, and there's some other younger players coming into the league that Trevor Lawrence still is at that end of the developmental curve. I'm not concerned about him being the quarterback of Jacksonville long term. I think that there's a lot of narrative that has been bandied about around Trevor Lawrence that probably doesn't really match feelings within that building or opinions around the league. And I think that that's kind of been one thing. But again, this is a player that we've seen produce for fantasy football, and you're able to get him later in hypothetically in dynasty value than he's actually returning. And that's to me, that's kind of a green flag, big green flag for dynasty value. When I've got a young-ish player who is either ranked higher in redraft or just outperforming his dynasty rank, and again, it's still on the early end of his career, those are guys that I'm going to want to put on my dynasty team.
Yeah, and I'm shocked. We're talking about all the listener league startups that we've been doing lately, but I'm in another startup with some Twitter analysts out here, and couldn't believe it that Trevor Lawrence fell all the way to 311. Jeff, he was the QB 13 off the board, and this is with some sharp people. And I was shocked at some of the names that went before him: AJ Brown, Marion Hampton, Tedero McMillan, Jordan Love went before Trevor Lawrence. And I just think that it's a little bit crazy that we're letting him fall that far. I'm looking at Trevor Lawrence as a guy that if he's there in the early second, he's on my radar and I'd be thinking about him. So I was trying to trade up in this league when I saw him fall into the third, couldn't get a deal done. And it was just blowing my mind every single time that I'm sitting here trying to move up for Trevor Lawrence. Somebody would reject my offer and then draft a different player, and he just kept falling all the way down to 311. Like I said, 25 years old, better offensive coordinator. He's got the long-term contract. He's got two amazing weapons around him. There's really nothing not to like in regards to Trevor Lawrence.
That's one of the things that always gets me in a startup is when you have this value in your mind that a guy is clearly standing out and you're trying aggressively to go up there and get them. And then like you'll get a response like, I think there's one guy on the board. I'm going to have to take in this pick. And then they go,
AJ Brown.
They don't draft
Jordan
the
Love.
guy that you're like, sure, I think there's one guy on the board too. And you didn't draft him. But no, I mean, in our startups that we have done, League 5 is the one that we are doing right now, and I got Trevor Lawrence at the 402.
Yep.
402 in that league. I got him in League 2. I got him at the 3-8. So right after Bo Nix, and so I got right after Jordan Love in that league. So I've gotten Trevor Lawrence again. This is I'm not telling you to do things that I wouldn't do. I've taken Trevor Lawrence in 2 out of these 5 leagues that we have done. So if people can do math at home, that's 40% of the leagues that we've done.
And this is for me another one, that 5.0 league that you just talked about that we're still in the midst of drafting. This is another one where I wanted to take Cam Ward earlier, and I said, you know what, I've done enough of these drafts now. Nobody's putting respect on Cam Ward's name, and I was able to get him at 412. So Jeff, we're not just out here blindly telling people to do things. We practice what we preach, and we have our rankings, and we look at where we differ, and we draft players that we like, and we tell you to draft the players that we like as well. Any closing thoughts here, Jeff, before we wrap up?
Well, I think we do want to probably throw it out to our listeners and our people who are so graciously follow us on social media to let us know who put together the best team in terms of value. I think that's something that maybe we can do. And then other than that, just a great thank you to everybody. And certainly there's been a little bit of a gap, like you mentioned at the top of the show, in terms of producing YouTube content, but we implore you to check out this divisional series that we do. This is we've discussed it behind the scenes and within, and this is both instrumental for both of our process when it comes to getting ready for this 2025 season, fleshing out takes on literally every player that you could potentially have a take on. By the time we get done, we're looking at potentially, I think, about 11 or 12 hours worth of content, and there's almost no fluff involved in that. It's we try very, very hard to scour these depth charts and look at I do projections for all these teams, and we work through those numbers and really put actionable spins on different things that you can take away for every single team across the league and every single fantasy relevant player.
And the thing, it's on the Dynasty show feed, but we're talking redraft outlooks, we're talking best ball, we're talking Dynasty, of course. Definitely recommend checking this out, though. We did it last offseason, and it was so much fun that we said, hey, let's just go ahead and run it back. So, yeah, like you said, about 11 hours of content, but Who knows? Could be a nice, beautiful Saturday. You got some yard work to get done. Throw it on 1.5 speed, and you only got 8 hours to listen to. So,
There you
I
go.
want to thank y'all so much for tuning in. We will be back with this little series that we're doing right now. Today, we talked about our favorite early round picks. Back later this week to talk about mid round picks. Next week, we'll be talking about late round picks. So, excited to be back on YouTube and excited for you to stick around and continue watching these episodes. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you in a couple days.